everybody, so I'm back with another vlog. I'm gonna make this one quicker. I'm pretty worn out. I had a big day. So first thing I want to talk about is my mom was having some sort of an episode, and it sounds like my sister was too. And I don't talk to my sister, but I went over to my mom's, and she's staying with my auntie because she's homeless, or my mom's homeless, and my auntie's letting her stay at her house while she's gone, because my auntie has another house in another part of the country, and so my mom's over there, and I went over tonight, and she's definitely having some sort of an episode, and it's kind of tough, being around like your family member if they're having some sort of like a mental health episode or something like that. And it wasn't like terrible or like too bad, but like the energy was 100% off, and it like takes a lot of my energy basically to try and like manage that, you know what I mean? And also she doesn't acknowledge it as well, so it takes a lot of energy. So but honestly, she tried to do nice things, and which I appreciate. She made me food, and she turned on my auntie's has a sauna in her basement, and I got to use that. So she turned it on ahead of time so I could use it. But it's just really tough though, because despite all the like nice things, or like the nice things or whatever, that my mom does, it's like she uses that as sort of like a leverage. Like, oh, but look, I'm doing all this nice stuff. You should be happy. You should be, and everything. Meanwhile, she's having like an episode or something. And by episode, I mean it's kind of freaky, honestly. And I remember it from when I was a kid, but too, I didn't know at the time, and nobody seemed to be able to figure this out. But she's like very I'm not trying to be like mean or anything, I'm just trying to be descriptive. She's very like treatment resistant, or has very little insight, and is like always battling against people if they imply or say anything about like what is going on, why is it that this is happening, do you have some sort of issue, maybe you should get help or something like that. But it never really came across that way, I guess, when I was growing up, or maybe from her in her life. I'm not sure. It might have. I actually kind of heard that some of my aunties and uncles or something tried to help her or something like that. But the sad part is really kind of me and my siblings, because we get caught in the crosshairs and everything. And the other thing too is that it's like my whole family struggles with this mental health issues and all these types of things. And not like the pretty ones, like psychotic issues, manic depressive, like these types of things, or depressive, or anxiety issues, or whatever. And so it's just kind of like a barrel full of crazy, or like a barrel of monkeys, or whatever. But it kind of turns into like the blind leading the blind somewhat. But it's very difficult. Let me just put it that way. It's very difficult to deal with. And yeah, I guess the for me, the anchor through all of it, more and more recently, has been my faith in Jesus Christ. Has really been an anchor for me. And that's not just to say like, some sort of like fundamentalism or whatever. I still try and do other things that would be helpful, but always kind of like as a faith as the bedrock for all of that stuff. So I don't put my faith in like all these different treatments as much as I used to, or all these like different techniques and everything. I put my faith in Jesus, and that's like the bedrock, and then I can also try other stuff from there, and basically have a more of an accepting perspective throughout all of it, like which really I can't really overstate that really overstate how much that actually helps, because The acceptance part is really necessary, and that part is comes with the faith. So anyway, but all that being said, it's still really hard. Seriously, it's so hard to deal with that stuff when it's in your family, when you have to deal with it yourself, like I do. But yeah, I remember from when I was a kid, like my mom had like these red rings around her eyes, like the it's kind of like just a feature of like a psychotic episode, or I'm not sure to be really mean. I know if she was to, you know, hear this or anything, she would just like be extremely angry because her whole thing is like there's nothing wrong with her is her whole thing. Um, but it's like yeah, that's such a obvious lie, and it's kind of like it's kind of painful when everyone has to somewhat play along with it, and it's like, does anybody see this? Like, does anyone see what I'm seeing? Like, kind of thing. But there's sort of that blindness or willful denial going on in my family too. But I think everyone's kind of like beat into submission as well. Um, and I think this is a relatable kind of thing, not just in my family, but also in many ways in society. A lot of us, we really get beat into submission, whether it's through school or work or a lot of different things. It kind of essentially, yeah, it does. A lot of things just beat us into submission in some ways, like our energy, our spirit, and these types of things. Yeah. And also, there's no like good channel. Like if the good channel is not really exposed or talked about, or it's obfuscated a lot. And the good channel is obviously, from my perspective, my opinion, Christianity. So that's a place to channel our energy. But a lot of people don't even really understand or talk about what that is, or it becomes muddled or muddied, or yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that would be things like going to church, having faith, trying to do good works. These types of things would be a better channel. And then also understanding that God wants to give us good things, but we have to seek God first. So anyway, one thing I noticed, it kind of freaked me out, my mom did, was it's kind of like derisive laugh and smile at the same time. And I see this not just in her, but I see this in a lot of people. It's kind of like a ha 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 type of thing. And I know it looks freaky, but I actually see this in some people, not just my mom or whatever, when she's having an episode. And again, she's, sometimes she's quite nice and everything, but yeah, that sort of like derisive smile and cynical laugh. I see this in a lot of boomers, even younger people too. I mean, maybe I did it. Probably I did it at some points too, but it's freaky. Like, it's kind of freaky. And in Canada, you see this actually much more, especially among a lot of old people, I think. I noticed too. But yeah, I think it's somewhat of a feature of how crazy things have gotten. And then so people just have no, they're kind of tapped out to their expressive limit of what they can do. So it's just kind of, that's where they're at, some people. But yeah, so I cut it off early tonight. We were playing a game of cribbage, but it was just too much. And I think that also along with it, that she's, getting dementia and Alzheimer's as well. I don't think like a very severe amount or anything, but she's definitely worried about it. And I have to give her credit too, because she got a book that was like 101 or 101 brain hacks for dementia and Alzheimer's. That's like a really good thing, that she's trying to do things to, help protect her mind her brain as she gets older. But I think a lot of old people are afraid of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's a real issue, and it's a real thing, and it affects a lot of people. But tonight, like, it was kind of tough because we were trying to play the game, and she was not really able to. She was able to play actually, but she was very slow, and like I can kind of tell when people are feeling a certain way. Like, I had this. I'm not trying to sound like, special or something, but I can kind of like feel it. Like, I can tell when people are feeling some kind of way, and she was just like very scared. She was like kept like trying to get me to count her cards and do all this stuff, and like, I'm not trying to sound mean or anything, but I was being very like slow, and I wasn't being like mean uh, when I was like helping out and anything like that, but I just did not have the energy. Like, that actually takes energy to do that kind of stuff. Not so much teaching, but sometimes it's kind of hard to explain. It's more like, I don't know, something to do with just the when somebody is afraid or is like acting afraid. It can kind of just it can be tough, like, to deal with that over and over and over, and you know, so it's just tough. But I think yeah. So I cut it off early. I told her, like, I was pretty honest. I was not trying to be mean, but I had to be honest. I said, like, the energy is off. Um, your brain is not working very well tonight. I'm just gonna go home. We could play, to halfway, up to 60 points. And I'm gonna go home. And she kind of got angry, but I didn't allow her to have like an angry outburst at me. She was, and this is like a pattern, by the way. She like was angry. She was saying like, "Didn't I do anything good tonight? Like, didn't I cook?" And I was like, I said, it's not that, it's the energy. You did do nice things, but I'm cutting it off before it gets like too horrible. And then she like switched, and she tried to like gaslight with positivity, and she's like, just look at the positive side, and I was trying to have a positive outlook. I was like, don't use that on me. Like, I know all about that stuff. It's like a lot of it is like gaslighting essentially, and weird too. Like, it's a combination of both. And it's kind of like guilting as well. There is evidence about, quote, having positive mindset and gratitude and all these things and whatever. Like, there actually is evidence, but people somewhat take that and they run with it. They try and like stretch it to cover everything. And then they try and stretch it to disregard everything else as well. And that's the part I don't like. That you can't acknowledge reality because you're, quote, being negative. So anyways, I told her, like, yeah, don't try to use that on me. But within like the psychology space as well, like therapists and whatever, they're crazy. Like, I'm not trying to be really mean or anything, but they use that so much, and partly a lot of it is because it's been used on them, and also, and this is just factual, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but in a study, 60 to 80% of therapists have a chronic mental issue that they live with, or that they reported that they live with, like 60 to 80%. So, yeah, it gets really crazy, to be honest, Like, it gets to be too much, like this positivity, positive mindset stuff. It's honestly nuts because it disregards so much of reality. And it gets used as like a bludgeon, or it gets used as a guilt trip, essentially. And I'm so sick of that. Like, I don't like that, to be honest. I prefer like realistic stuff, I don't prefer like indulging in negativity. Although, I've done that online and stuff. You get into a doom scroll, or you get into watching a really negative documentary or something or whatever. Like, that stuff actually has an attraction for people. crime stories, crime documentaries, police body cam, all this stuff. But I prefer like realistic stuff, but not just like super skewed either way, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how to put that very well. But I think with parents getting older, it's really tough, honestly. And a lot of people are experiencing this because there are so many baby boomers, so many, because they're a huge cohort, and um, they're messed up. Like, I'm not trying to be really mean, but a lot of them are messed up emotionally and spiritually as well. And they're getting older, and it's really tough, honestly. But I think that the way to deal with it and the way to go about it is with acceptance and prayer, honestly, because it's like they need help, but they don't want to ask for help somewhat, and they try and act like they're in control and in charge, but they're really not, because they're all kind of cowards. I'm not trying to be really mean here, but the men, like boomer men, they cower in front of the face of complete third world nigger invasion. I'm not trying to be really crass or crude, but that's how Nick Fuentes characterized it. And I thought it was funny because it's so accurate, even though obviously it's a slur word and it's really a cacophonism instead of a euphemism. A euphemism would be like a euphemism would be like diversity or whatever. That's a euphemism. A cacophonism, so a euphemism softens reality. A cacophonism sharpens it. It's the opposite. And it is a complete third world, invasion of black and brown people from India, from Africa, from the Middle East, into Western countries. Those stats don't lie, and everyone can open their eyes and see it. But the older boomer men, it's like they lost a long time ago. And so we're all kind of just dealing with it. But to be honest, I mean, it's somewhat above their heads. Like, they do have responsibility, but they don't really take responsibility. And also, it was sort of the generation before them. I mean, you could trace it back further, but it was guys like Woodrow Wilson that screwed us with the Federal Reserve Act. And it was other things too, but it was during the boomer time, the boomer heyday, like during the sexual revolution, during the Hart-Celler Act, during all this stuff. But they were kind of screwed before that because women getting the right to vote was a huge mistake, absolute mistake, because women all vote liberal, like left-wing majority, so they'll just vote for liberal and left-wing policies. And yeah, it's a huge mess. But and then old women, like boomer women, I try and avoid them, to be honest. Like, for the most part, I try and avoid them because, and that sounds harsh, but when I was younger, I used to, and like I'm 30 now, but I used to indulge these old ladies and talk to them and ask questions and I guess jester max, I guess that's kind of the word now among the younger generation, but sort of like almost like perform, but play dumb and just ask questions to like keep the conversation going and these kinds of things. But to be honest with you, what these old ladies are doing is they're harvesting energy. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but they are, a lot of the time, they're somewhat like in a fantasy world, and they do get something. Like, it's not just like a nice old lady most of the time. So there are some, but a lot of them, I'm not trying to be mean again, it's just like, I mean, they're kind of distraught, and like I said, they have emotional issues, spiritual issues. They sit in front of the TV, they watch YouTube. I mean, they're not all terrible or something like that. I'm not trying to put it that way, but um, uh, in like a healthy society and stuff like that, like they it it's messed up. I'm trying to like say this is like not really very healthy because the the parents would be, or the parents and the grandparents would be sort of involved with the family. The family is like the basic unit of the society, and they're just not really like, it's all atomized and broken apart. And older women, like old old ladies, they enjoy like, being a part of the family. Like that's what they really love. That's why having children is really important for women and for just society and men and but everyone. But that's really important. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say, but they're also hoarding all the wealth. Like, that's just factual as well. If you look at the share of wealth that boomers had when they were young, compared to the share of wealth that millennials and Gen Z have when they're young, and then the proportion of that compared to from then to now, it's crazy. Like if you look at the charts, the boomers have so much more proportional wealth, like share of all the wealth. So anyways, but I'm not going to harp on that point. But anyways, I would say that it is tough, and it's tough on a lot of people. But honestly, acceptance and prayer, these things are important. They really do help. And yeah, so I guess my sister, she, made a not that great choice that, may put her in debt. And I don't talk to my sister. We don't get along. I would like to. I pray for, healing in my family, but yeah, my family's really broken up, really broken apart. And it's really tough to deal with these kinds of issues. And, you know, much as, you may try and do all this stuff, but it's really tough when you get, you know, people's personalities and all this other stuff involved. That's why I pray about this stuff a lot. But I don't like engaging in family gossip, but my mom was like telling me about it a bit, but I just said, she got herself into like a debt trap, and hopefully she can get out of it. Like she should try and get out of it if possible. But my mom was saying like she has like she has manic depressive or something like this, and um, I was like saying like, yeah, well, it seems like you're having episodes, she's having one. Like the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. I'm not trying to be really mean when I say this stuff to my family, but my whole thing is like, why is nobody ever honest? Why does nobody ever try and deal with this stuff? And now I'm older, I realize because they're scared. Because it's painful. Talking about your issues is like really hard. And like specifically talking about, guilt and shame issues. Because definitionally, people don't want to deal with those. That's how they kind of exist. But the only real way to deal with those is to like talk about them, and it's not just to like circle around them forever with someone and make somebody feel uncomfortable. It's to do it in like a proper way, which is not easy, honestly. It's like therapy can help. It's probably like one of the best places for it, and but not always. Sometimes a better place is actually prayer and speaking to clergy or speaking to God. But those things are hard, and it takes time, and it's not easy. So anyway, speaking about boomers, it was weird. I wanted to get some food, and then I was driving around, and I wasn't really able to pick a place, but then it kind of came to me to go to this place that has like good chili, and it's like organic and everything. It feels like real food. It's not just like some fast food place. And there was a guy there, and he was, the whole place though, it's kind of like, um, it's run by like a religious group, and the guy there, he was talking to me, and I had this thing with me, this Schumann resonance generator, which I've been carrying around because I have a battery pack on it, and honestly, I feel like this thing really does change the atmosphere and the brain waves or something, and it makes it like that people feel more normal, or that they feel like more like they can talk or something like this. I'm not too sure. I definitely feel that though. And this man who was working there, he was talking to me. He was sharing kind of like, he was asking me questions, and he was sharing about um, the place, like the religious group, and we were talking about Jesus, and he seemed very emotional, honestly. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I actually think it's totally fine for people to, talk in public, and it's okay if people feel emotional, but um, uh, I don't know. That one's kind of tricky though. It's not just like you can. Um, it's not. That's a tricky one. Let's just put it that way. I don't know how to exactly talk about that, or I don't know exactly what to say about that. But obviously, no one wants to be emotional publicly, or at least most people don't. But this man, you could just see it on his face. And the thing is that I see people's faces, and most people's faces look ashen. Like they look like almost like, there's something going on, and I have my own theories about it, but there's many, it's multifactored. But you can see like in people's eyes, they look like they have like bags under them, and their faces look kind of pale, and with this man, he was trying to smile and everything, but like people seem like they're in pain, right? And so he was sharing and everything, and I just I thanked him for his story and for talking, and then while I was eating and everything, but I didn't actually mind too much. But then, and we were actually in agreement about quite a bit, just that Jesus is king, and you know that, yeah, these types of things religiously, but not entirely. I didn't want to get into an argument, but obviously our theology would be different. I'm Orthodox, and he's from a different Christian faith, I guess. I don't know how to put that exactly. Sect, I don't know. But I don't want to be rude, but I also want to be accurate. So I would, from the Orthodox perspective, we would consider his group to be heretical, like a heretical sect of Christianity. But again, I'm not gonna, go saying that. Like, not trying to be mean. I don't know. It's a tough balance, I'm not really sure how to do that exactly. But I just met him, and I wasn't expecting this conversation. But it was a fairly good conversation, and I kind of wonder if I was guided there somewhat, because we shared this, and then I paid, and he came up and gave me a cinnamon bun that was wrapped, because they sell that there at this deli. And he said, this is a gift, and it's from the heart. And I said, thank you. I shook his hand. I said, I love you, brother. God be with you. Have a good day. And, it's kind of a tough thing. Like, I've been telling people more and more often, I love you, even to strangers like this man. But, I asked his name, but it is a tough thing. Like, it's honestly tough. And I kind of somewhat wonder about it, but I feel like it kind of needs to be said. Like, it kind of is really important. Not just kind of, but like that is the number one commandment, is to love God and to love your neighbor. And it's like, who really follows that? I'm not trying to be mean to people, but like, That is the number one. Seriously, if you read in the Bible, it's like that's the greatest commandment, right? Jesus tells us that. Jesus, obviously he's God, but he got that, you could say, straight from God himself, but God the Father, the Holy Spirit, but he also would have read that in Deuteronomy because Jesus studied the Torah. He would have read it, and he actually, I believe, read it in Aramaic. He would have spoke Aramaic the time that he walked and lived. But yeah, that was in Deuteronomy. It's one of the commandments. I think it's in Deuteronomy 6, maybe. But it is the greatest commandment. I guess it's given by God to Moses, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But anyway. Okay, so... yeah, and like I pray for people. Like I pray for this man. I try to pray for people because I think that's really powerful. Because it's not like about me, really. I'm trying to ask and invite and allow God to work through me. You know what I mean? And honestly, it's tough. Like seriously, it is not super easy because my own emotions kind of like get stirred up, and anyway. And that obviously, maybe not obviously, but I don't love that. Like I don't like that because the emotional part is like sometimes it's painful, but after the painful part, like tears or whatever it is, I feel better. I think that's the gift, right? The gift from God, and so I appreciate that guy, and I also, one thing I say to people, or try to remember to say to people, it's hard to really, think of everything in the moment, but I did say it, and I try to say, God be with you. The reason I say that is because I read somewhere that, I think it might have been like one of the saints, I'm not sure, but they said like, God be with you now that you know these things or feel these things, because it's like I cannot be there for everybody in their lowest moment, to be underneath them, to catch every feeling, to like wipe away every tear. Like, dude, that's really hard. Like, that's like extremely, extremely hard, because to do that you effectively have to try and like not be yourself, but like put yourself in their shoes and lose yourself, and that's really not healthy. So what I say is God be with you, because God can do that. So yeah, it's like now that people are like, now that these things are there, it's like God be with you, so that maybe later on or whenever, when people are considering these things or mulling these things over or whatever, that's the time when I pray that God comes to them. So anyways, and it's somewhat nice to talk to people. It's really weird because a few months ago I could not have done any of this. Seriously, a few months ago there would be no way. So so I've really changed or improved or come back in a sense. Because I actually used to, when I was much younger, have a greater, like, kind of like a similar ability to talk to people, although I didn't really know how to go about conversations in a safe way, or like in a healthy way, or like a, even now, and I say this like, well, I don't know if I should say it. I'm considering saying a holy way, but I don't know, I don't want to be prideful, basically. I want to stay humble. So, but I try, you know what I mean? So anyways, yeah, I can't fix my mom, I can't fix my family, I can't fix all these people, though I try to help, but I just pray for them. So, yeah. And I do try to help though. I'm not trying to like actively make things worse. But I would say that what takes a lot off of me too is kind of knowing reality as well. Like knowing that, like I'm reading this book, Operation Gladio. Now in like chapter 4 or 5, it says, it's talking about how the CIA started the heroin trade and the drug trade in the ghettos in America. That was the CIA. They worked with the Italian mafia. They facilitated everything, and they were getting the money to fund their operation in Italy, Operation Gladio, to defend against communism. Now, the drug part. The CIA was doing all of this, funding it all. Meanwhile, and this was throughout, like, the maybe even in the late 40s, but like the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and this is known. People know about this. It's on record. There's books about it and everything. I guess not everyone really knows about it. I was pretty surprised. But there's also the DEA that was, in the U.S. called the Drug Enforcement Administration or agency. And this was like the same agency, if you've ever watched Breaking Bad, where Walter White, the antagonist or protagonist, the good or bad guy in Breaking Bad, but the main character, he is like peddling methamphetamine, and he's like a kingpin. He's really good at it. Now his he's trying to stay a step ahead of Hank Schrader, and he works for the DEA. Right? Okay, so there's a real quote in this book, Operation Gladio, that says, it's by a DEA high-level person, and he says, I've worked for the DEA for 30 years, and almost invariably at the end of every high-profile drug bust, we find that it was run by the CIA. Is that not a sick joke? Like, I don't even know how to process that. Like, I don't know if I should laugh or if I should be angry. Like, that's so sick and twisted. Because that has ruined so many lives. Now, of course, the CIA or whatever, they would say that they're doing it to save more lives. I'm not sure if they would really say that, but they're doing that because they see communism as a bigger threat. And then if you go a level higher, both of those are just a kind of a false dialectic, and maybe even the CIA don't really know this, or maybe they do, the high level who put all these things into place. But even that is a false dialectic between capitalism and communism, the West and the East. And above that is the banking system and the banking cartel. The Jews, the Rothschilds, they're behind all of that. And, if you want to go like even a step higher, I think that's where you just kind of get to good and evil. Like, you get to worship of false gods and worship of the true God, Jesus Christ, the Holy Trinity. But the false gods, these really high level people or whatever, the most elite or whatever in their inner circles, I think they're just worshiping false gods, and they have some sort of promises for power or something like that. But obviously it's the path of destruction. But it gets really crazy as you work through it, because the CIA was partnered with the Catholic Church in the Roman Catholic Church in Italy. And the Roman Catholic Church gets their money, or at least has gotten loans from the Rothschilds since the 1830s. It's all on record in the Epstein files, confirmed in the Epstein files, but people have kind of known this from other places as well, but it gets really crazy. And I just thought, like, um, these chunks of reality, like these real things, where people's lives are being destroyed by drugs. My brother, he was a drug addict for 10 years, and he was doing all kind of hard drugs. Like, this stuff is like, you know people blame the cartels and all of this, but um, maybe today that's more of who's doing it. But a lot of people's lives were ruined by the CIA. Like, what the heck? That's just, I don't even know what to say about it. I really don't know how to react to that. I think it's evil. Um, but I keep that in mind when I think about how, some people, especially like in like social work or therapy or whatever, they put blinders on and they think they can fix everything. Meanwhile, there's other people that are actively trying to destroy everything. Like, I don't know why that's kind of like, I don't know how come I laugh about that. I guess I laugh about that because it's just true. Um, so yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, my family is super broken apart, and I think like um, the hidden mental illness stuff is awful. Like, that's a really tough one, because people try and hide this stuff or they try and deal with it their own ways, but it does affect other people. And um, yeah, so I've gone through a lot of stuff to try and figure out and get to this point where now I kind of know about this stuff. I've gotten a degree in psychology. I've done a lot of work with this stuff. I've talked to a lot of crazy people. I'm not trying to be mean, but I've done that. I've gone through my own issues quite a lot. I still do. But I think like the hidden part is really tough. And the secrets, like secret keeping as well, is really tough as well. So, yeah. But anyway, today I had a big day. I did have a doctor's appointment this morning, and I had a therapy appointment, and then I went and saw my mom, so it was a lot. And I talked to this gentleman at the deli, but the 963 hertz that I'm using, this thing, it seriously has an effect because I noticed that I have like energy, and I don't feel that very much. And I think a lot of people probably can kind of relate, but something really is sapping our energy, and I think that this thing just sort of like restores kind of a normal. I think we are supposed to kind of have energy. And for years I just kind of had no energy. I was always on like empty gas tank. And this thing, it kind of restores my energy, and it makes it more like I can think. So, big difference. And I think it's helping. I'm kind of skeptical about whether things are good or bad. But one thing I can say is that so far it's working, and I've been using it for a few days. But yeah, I'm going to keep experimenting. I don't know if it's going to keep working. And I notice it makes it kind of tough to read and understand and process. So I kind of turn it off at certain points. And also when I'm sleeping, I don't really know if I want to have it on when I'm sleeping as well. So, and the last thing I'll say is that this truck driver girl that I've been talking to, isn't that kind of odd? She's a truck driver. There's not very many female truck drivers, and she's pretty young, and she's, in my opinion, she's pretty attractive as well. But we had like these plans that she was gonna that I'd go see her if she ever drove like to the states, northern states close to Canada, because she's down in the U.S. truck driving, and she texted me and said that she was like in a state that's close by, and she was like 200 miles from my city, and then she just kind of went silent and didn't say anything. Like, I tried saying, where and when and how long you're gonna be there. And I tried calling her, and she just like didn't answer. And I thought that was really strange. And then um and then right, and then I tried to call her like the next day, and she didn't answer. And then I think I tried to text her maybe like a day later. I said, "What's going on?" She didn't answer. And I think I might have tried to call her like again the next day, and she said, "I'll call you back." And she never called back. And then I just kind of like waited, and then she just texted me like a picture of her cat, saying that because she takes her cat in the truck. And it's kind of weird, but I actually know other truck drivers do this too, so it's kind of a thing where truck drivers bring their pet, sometimes a dog, sometimes I guess a cat too, but I think usually a dog if they do. But she kind of just like brushed past and sent a picture and said like, "Oh, now we're in Wyoming." And then I was like, "That's a nice picture. Why have you been acting so weird?" And her response, basically, she just went into like kind of like denial or gaslighting, because she just said, "What did I do?" And I said, "You didn't answer and you didn't reply." And then she said, "Sorry, I've been exhausted," or something like this. And I said, "That's, you've been acting weird." And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yes, I just noticed you've been acting weird." And she's like, "Sorry, I've been just tired and didn't feel like talking." And I was like, "Okay, that I can understand." And that's kind of the last message we sent, but I'm like, "Yeah, bro, it's over." It's been over, but at this point, um, it's past time to end things, but the over point is the weird thing that I didn't really like was that she said that like she was close by, and we had talked about like the plan was that I would try and meet her. And so it's like, why did she say that and then not respond? Like, that was just, honestly, it was kind of messed up. But yeah, I just think that probably maybe she's having an episode. Like, she said she had some sort of psychotic break from work or something. So I'm aware I attract these types of people, but or maybe they attract me. I'm not. We attract each other. I don't know, but I'm kind of aware of this stuff. Like, but also I just don't think. Yeah, I guess it's just not gonna work out. So, and I feel kind of tough about it. Like, or not tough, but like bad about it, because on some level, like I do want things to work out. Um, like a relationship and that, and this girl too, obviously, like well, maybe not obviously, but she was talking about how she wants kids and everything. And the thing is too, for women, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're getting older and they want children. Like, this girl's like 25, maybe she said she's going to be turning 26. And it's like, women should be having children in their early 20s. They should not be going to school and traveling and getting career, years and years for a degree to get a career, and deferring childbirth until their late 20s and 30s, sometimes mid 30s. That they think this way, but the body doesn't work that way. And women don't want to hear that, obviously, and no one has the nuts to tell them that, like the balls to tell them that. And it's also optional too. A lot of people, they just don't want to hear something, so they go and listen to what they want to hear. But again, the body doesn't work that way. And so it messes women up. Like, they kind of, some of them really go crazy, but yeah, this girl, she really wants children, and I don't blame her. Like, I think that's natural and normal, but it's like the women's body, when they get into those I'm not trying to be gross, but those times of their hormonal cycle, they really crave childbirth and all of this. But all of those like drives and everything, they're getting delayed, and they're getting distracted by other stuff, and you can take your pick, but of what people use as a bludgeon for that, or a numbing thing for that. But it does happen, and it does have effects on people. Like, it messes with women, especially their maternal instincts. You know, they're really made for childbirth and child rearing. And I don't think that's like a bad thing. Like, I don't think that's a shameful thing or whatever. And I don't think that they should be put onto like some mind frame or whatever, or worldview where they're supposed to be equal with men and have like the same type of career or better than all these men. And in that way they can be equals. It's like, no. Statistically, they're happier when they're married and with children. And that's like the joke, or like not the joke, but like the sick joke, I guess. Because a lot of women are being led to believe that they really will be happier somehow if they go travel and all this stuff and get tattoos and get cats and dogs and get a high-paying career and be a boss babe or a boss bitch or however you want to say it or whatever. But that's all toxic stuff. And the thing is that if you get into those worldviews and those mindsets, sorry, not worldviews and mindsets rather, but those media channels, like if that's your feeds and that's your media reality and the people around you believe that stuff as well, bro, the brainwashing is complete. I'm not trying to be like, you know, really cynical or anything, but because it's honestly, it's like this stuff is the degeneration of our society, but that's a huge factor of it. That's a huge factor of it. And I'm not trying to say it to blame women or whatever. I honestly just think that they're really easy to manipulate. And I don't even know how to put that other than just saying that it's a kind of a factual thing. And the thing is that it's hard to acknowledge if you've been manipulated. It's easier to trick somebody than to convince somebody that they've been tricked. And the trick is all of this, like, you know, defer childbirth stuff. But it's a big issue because if the culture was there, women would just do it, you know? Seriously, that's legitimately about as far as it needs to go. But women don't really create the culture, they just enforce the cultural norms. And it's who created our culture? It's actually Jews. And I'm not trying to be like really mean or anything. I'm trying to just be factual. Our culture and our cultural creators, and pretty much the entirety of the left, like the modern left, you know, there's like the right and the left, is a Jewish creation. Seriously. And a lot of the cultural figures as well, and I just kind of learned this today, you know, Jay Dyer was talking about it. They are CIA operatives. I know that sounds crazy, but if you look into it, they are. Like, I think even Coco Chanel, a lot of people were saying that she was CIA or something. There's some books on it, but that's not 100% confirmed. But yeah, I mean, this is the way it is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else to say. It's tough to really have perfect linguistic precision on it. I mean, that's kind of what's going on. Okay, so that's everything.